All right, I'm going to be doing a an exaltation called God, the architect of our lives, and how He has a plan for us. The reason why I'm doing it like this is because there was a video on Sunday, and it didn't get recorded properly. So this gives me kind of a second chance to actually do it better, and well, yeah, it was done better. It was done good, but it just wasn't the audio wasn't captured, so things were missing out of it, and I can probably do it with more understanding than what I did. So, the theme of this exaltation is God, the architect of our lives, and how He has a plan for us. Now, I'm not going to say everything that I said back on Sunday, but I'm going to try to do my best. So, this shouldn't come as a shock or take you by surprise that God has a purpose for you here on earth. Now, as I said to everyone, I was like, "Hey, yeah, I am a science fictional writer, game designer, cartoonist, illustrator, and I'm a streamer also." And I was asking, is there anyone who's just like me? Just to see if there was anyone there. Yeah, I know there's not really much there, so uh, it was just to kind of open up to see if people were that kind of people out there. But you listening to it, you might have some kind of interest in science fiction writing, game design, or being a cartoonist or illustrator. And I was also taking from uh, Jeremiah, we know that known. I will be taking my exaltation from Jeremiah, as we know that known as we know many known verses comes from this book. Two that stand out is Jeremiah 1 verse 5 from the ESV version saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." This verse knows that Jeremiah was appointed a prophet to the nations. And so I was trying to, uh, you know, be a point, just talking about certain things that were happening in our day to day lives based on the scripture. So I was saying, how does it relate to us and you know people of God? Well, it relates to me because what happens is that as a writer, words pop off the page. You have to make the words kind of be understood by people, and you have to and being involved with a lot of pop culture, which I know I was up there on stage, so this is kind of different to be talking like this differently from being on stage. Um, with all the eyes, but I think I did pretty good. I was told did pretty good after that. But being on, but like it pops off the page because what happens is like being a writer or in pop culture and stuff like that. Hearing the journals out there, hearing the news media, hearing YouTubers out there who talk about certain situations that are going on, and you know, um, and just having to write buzzwords or things that pop and get people's attention. Uh, it's a thing that you have to keep in mind as a writer because you want people's attention, and with this kind of world where things are not or or things well people don't have short attention span, and things are have to be very quick. You don't really spend all that time into most of the stuff. It reminds me that words carry weight, even what I'm saying right now, or even what I said on that day. They carry a lot of weight because it just like whatever you say, definition kind of thing. If you say work, and then someone's like, I don't like the word work, and they use the word task, you put a thesaurus, and you're like, okay, well, how about the word task instead? You know, the words, they have a lot of weight to them. It's just you can play word semantics, and you don't want to get someone mad, so you say certain way. You phrase it differently, but you're actually just saying the same thing. So when you're writing and you've probably made someone mad with your writing or something like that, or they see a dialogue of a character and stuff like that. If the first time they go through it, they're going to be like, "Well, these words, I don't like what he said," or and stuff like that. It doesn't even have to be in the comic sphere or um, gaming or anything like that. It's still forms of still has weight and it still gives the character. As another point is that yeah, it's a form of communication. So uh, as as is trying to communicate to us through all the words and stuff like that, and and how they carry weight. His words are there because we can understand how much communication that he's trying to give to us, and what words carry weight, and not just saying okay, not saying I'm reading out the King James version or something like that, not saying I'm reading out of a certain book kind of weight, but what the actual meaning of the word is when you kind of break it down to kind of understand the very and the parts of the word and what it means because you can read something and still not have understanding and it could just or it means nothing to you but having the words come out and they actually form a character opposed from what we see on the outside is is why as it relates to I guess writers well it relates to me most of you as a writer and how and how in God's architectural plans for our lives his word is it has all these points it has we don't really see the character but we see what the characters were and even with ourselves our own lives where we have our words and we're saying things but what happens is that we see the outside of ourselves and we're trying to and what we say describes what we're saying as I believe the Bible is saying that it's the words that come in your mouth. You can look all nice, but what you say is what utters from your soul. So these words carry weight, and as a writer, like even if you're writing fiction and you're writing for a character and stuff like that, the fact that the words actually do the same thing, you can have a character be. Well, I think we've seen with like different games actually. Um, I know, like, there's like, I guess I don't know if I should just name drop the game because I'm not even doing a stage thing. So, um, spoken for there. Let's just call that game out. I hear how fans or people playing the game are like, oh, I can't like the writing isn't so great because like even though you can turn down the the dialogue, you still like you're first introduced to the character with all these kinds of things. People are like say it would be nice to have a silent protagonist again, and but what you're really doing at that time is uh, projecting yourself onto that character. But when a character starts speaking, well, depends. It could be writing and stuff like that. Um, it it formulates the kind of character, um, and formulates what they say and stuff like that, and determines if this person is if they're good enough or cool enough, if they're a protagonist or antagonist kind of thing. So that's what I wanted to say, but I had to like neuter some of the dialogue because I was like, yeah, it's not gonna fly in a place where it's not a lot of young people and not a lot of people who gonna understand. So I guess it gives me as like a second chance to kind of like talk about that. Um, and another point, then the Bible reminder that the Bible is God's word given to man. And even though if it is written by man's hands, it's still God's word, and it goes out for its purpose. So that's what we have to keep in mind that as He's an architect for our lives, He's directing us and giving us the wisdom that we need and a purpose. And the words that are in that book is for a reason to give us new hope and understanding. I don't have every scripture down on paper, but it's just the idea is that what you're hearing and what you're reading, it's something that is supposed to elevate you, and is to just and is made for a purpose, is made to for a time like this, for you to read it and then let it be something that comes into your soul and changes your life. To further explain how God's architecture skills builds, it builds, it advises in its construction towards its final plan, and we are on that plan of how He's building His kingdom. As Jeremiah 29 verse 11 says, "For I knew the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future." Now, I continue more about writing by saying, it's not easy to be a writer or writing a story. Uh, Definitely not, because, as I was saying before, you're trying to convey a message to the person. Maybe whatever message is you're trying to, maybe about good and evil, maybe about someone's Homer Odyssey and stuff like that. And just being a writer and a Christian writer, you can't just uh, do anything. You have to you have to kind of balance your writing style, your writing skills with the world around you. So uh, you have to just weigh your words properly, because you don't want to get the wrong message. Um, it's maybe easy for some. Maybe they figured out how to have that balance between uh, being a writer and being a Christian and writing certain stuff. I know for a fact, for me, I was told not to do magic in any of my stories. So what happens is, for me, I had to figure out a way to cut out magic in general. And the good thing was that I went to do more stories based on psychological and machinery. Uh, what else did I do? I mean, I did start with like a little magic at first, and the story was pretty easy. But you realize that it breaks all conventions of it can, or more normally, it can break all conventions of the world aspect and world building and stuff. And when you go with, like, things that are more realistic, it's probably not the most selling thing, because I wrote Black Men, probably didn't market it properly, but I can tell you for sure, it wasn't really much selling. I mean, it did catch a few eyes. It made a couple bucks, but what happens is the writing probably wasn't as on par as the stuff you see on TV that's probably well marketed, or someone else's thing. Um, Now, I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm just speaking for myself and my experience. But as a writer and the things that I've actually done, I had to explain we anthropomorphize God despite no written document or papers of his own kind of writing. Um, well, for those who are listening, if you know what Nancy the spider is, they anthropomorphize that character by giving it human characteristics. But you can just look towards anything from any kind of era, anything Disney like. You can look at um, Blue from that plane. Wow, I can't remember what it's called. Tailspin. I hope it's Tailspin. You can look at many other characters that have been anthropomorphized, but at first, when I came to my mind, I can go on for days, or populate for a TV trope and talk about, like, anthropomorphized characters all day, but I have a podcast for that. Um, you know, so, like, no written documents, and we attribute these physical concepts to many things around us, like idioms too. It's written in the stars how things are written, even though it's like, you can't write in the stars, but we give it a characteristic, of a human characteristic, of being able to write in stars, even though it's virtually impossible, but it's an idiom nonetheless. And it's like Written in stars, of course, means you believe that it will happen by a force that controls the future, and we Christians know that force is Christ. Um, or writing on the walls. It would symbolize a bad omen. We know that was taken from Daniel. That God writes for us in our lives. Even our idioms, our dialogue, our culture, in some cases, do take from the Holy Bible and describes the characteristics of God and the things that only He can do. Now, I don't think we've ever seen writing in the stars, but we know that the Bible talks about writing on a wall, and we can write on walls too. Obviously, it writing on the walls is just is a warning sign, and when we use it, but we still give a characteristic to something that has to write on the walls because human beings have been only known species to write anything out there. Well, okay, well, there's robots coming up, but hey, still, that's besides the point. There's some Bobbyism from in there. I call it Bobbyism because that's what everyone knows me at church. Um, all the world is a stage, and all men and women are merely players. Some say actors, and that's a quote from William Shakespeare, and how we're acting out a role for us. Now, I remember I didn't really hear it from first from William Shakespeare, but I did hear it from I think it was a Japanese developer. I'm pretty sure it was like I might be misquoting names and stuff like that, but I remember hearing it from like a Japanese developer. I think it was who was making Smash. Um, quote that, and then it was the first thing that came to me when I went to go look it up, and it just really says like uh, that doesn't mean there's like no consequences. It just means that on God's stage, even as a writer or illustrator or a comic book designer myself, I have control of the narrative. I got control of the images, the panels, the angles, the camera, the interaction, and everything like that. And all these are actors. Even with the RPG Maker game that I'm working with now, the people are called actors, and then that made me think. And I didn't really add that to my Sunday morning exaltation, but it did make me think about how we are all actors on God's stage, and the stage is Earth, and everything around is part of the play. Not We're not doing this for his entertainment, but we is giving us free will to live on this planet and to do what we can according to his word, because his word is what's supposed to guide us. Now, this is not a case for empathy or nihilism, which a lot of people have become doomers and stuff like that. What I've seen, maybe not out there in like in I was gonna say the real world, but maybe not there in your everyday lives. But a lot of it does hide itself in places in the internet and stuff like that, where people become nihilists, and the memes that you see too, that like people follow by those, or they're really like the soy jack pieces really describe people with like nihilism and apathy, and the doomer, and and all those other stuff like that. um it's funny how memes are somewhat like jokes, but yet they describe. Oh, we put them into a joking kind of thing to relate to others, but they still relate to one another, and it still relates to us in a way, regardless of like how cartoonish they look. They still describe people, and uh, that doesn't mean because we're on a stage that we can just should do anything we want and do anything that we can, because we have to keep in mind that there's a God and He's guiding us, and so nothing escapes this director. Our God is our director of our lives, and that's why we call upon Him so we can have direction. There you go. Look at that. All things work. All things work out together. His plans cannot be changed by human intervention. And what I mean by that is that they cannot be changed by you can't force his hand. You can't just grab his hand and say, "Well, I want to change my life" and stuff like that, regardless. Or how old JRPG games were like, we need to attack and kill God. I think yeah, most JRPG games that had have to do with that. Um, did not the God, but a God. Nonetheless, they still pertain around those kind of situations. Um, And then, despite how we listen to the news and hear about people that we may not like, because there's tons of people there like Elon Musk, and Donald Trump. Those people that people don't like and stuff like that. But God has them there for a purpose. Political parties, like left and right wing uh, parties. Uh, so many things out there. News articles, not news article, but news station, Fox News or CNN. Or I can go on with this list. There's the JLP, the PNP, but that's more Jamaican related and stuff like that. But I threw this one here too. For the Liberal Democratic Party and the Constitutional Democratic Party too. Like you know, just to say I was really when I think it was supposed to be a Zoom called or not Zoom. It was supposed to be Zoom to Facebook. So I said, you know what? There might be people who are part of those parties are listening too. So include them to understand that God's purpose is for everyone. Now, God has everything in His hand, and He knows what will affect you today. And they are also the people, and they are here for a purpose too. So regardless of how much they trigger you because of their name, because of like you don't like what they said because some news outlet said hate them and stuff like that, or hate this because it's like that. First of all, I don't know why you're being controlled by news outlets out there, wherever they may be, the popular ones or the less popular ones. I really don't know how you are allowing them to give you your marching orders, but nonetheless, they are here, and what you should really be doing is praying for them. Maybe you're not a kind of Christian person who prays, or maybe don't pray a lot, or maybe you pray when you're in trouble or something like that. As long as you identify yourself as a child of God, you should at least pray for these people, whatever they may be, if they're capitalist or right wing authoritarian or left wing authoritarian, liberal left or the liberal right, whatever they may be, middle center, doesn't matter. These people still need your prayer because God has a purpose for you, and maybe this is one of His purposes is for you to be praying for the people that you don't like. Asking God, how could I help, or how could I help change their lives? Because maybe they forgot to pray. Maybe they need a prayer. And the most people that are out there, shaking fists and making noise and trying to get you to fall into secularism, to hate more, so they can farm you for your hate, for your hate bucks, basically, your attention, your eyes. It makes no sense just allowing them to do it when you're supposed to be promoting love and peace and joy and all the fruits of the spirit, uh, around to the people around you, because people can necessarily hear you, and people, just because you feel that, um, because you believe them, they can control you in everything that you are going to hear from then on, and with their message. So these people are made for a purpose, and just remember, maybe when you're around talking to some friends, whatever you may be, water cooler, or maybe out there just saying, having a walk with your friends and stuff like that. Just got to remind them that, you know, that Jesus is Lord, and what you are doing are going with God's plan for being the light, the salt and light. I want to encourage you, brothers and sisters, that God has a purpose, and He's laying it out by being the architect of your life. So, accepting Him in your life will help you follow His instructions, and He explains in every word, with every word that comes out of the book. And there was a time where I was building a shed, and me and some guy, we were trying to build it, but we didn't read the instructions. And the problem was that we built a shed? Question mark. Well, we did. We built a shed, but there's small little parts missing. And the moral story is that uh, if you don't follow the instructions, you will have a lot of parts missing, or you'll have too many parts, and you're just like, I don't know where this is supposed to go. Maybe the manufacturer were allowing us to have extra screws and stuff like that. Um, I don't know what kind of manufacturer allows to have extra parts. It's like maybe not too much, but there's a lot of screws, more than I thought. There was like, okay, were we supposed to even have this kind of amount of screws and nuts at the end of the shed? But we built it; it's still standing. But the question is like, were we supposed to have this? Because there were some parts that didn't get to go up. Some features on it, and because we followed instructions like a little too late and close to the end. So as those are things that you got to keep in mind. And the problem is that when we don't follow the instructions, we end up blaming people, blaming the system, blaming the problem, blaming everything that is going on. Like we get frustrated, and then like there's inefficiencies in our life. We started saying, okay, you know what? It's not our fault, because it has to be this person's fault because they weren't really clear enough. But the instructions are there, so we just have to take it slow and actually like look for them. I think there was like one thing that came with without instructions. I don't know if it's because it was like forgotten. Maybe there's some IKEA stuff. If if IKEA still does that, I'm not really sure. But most of the stuff I've picked out from a store has instructions, and sometimes just not paying attention, looking for it, and jumping ahead and thinking that you know how to do it, it will lead some adverse side effects. I mean, as a designer, I have done that myself. I have shown things that you're supposed to do, but people have zoomed past. Maybe they're because they're distracted, or maybe they just wanted to get the experience over. They didn't really feel that they should have spent much time, and that's happens to a lot of us. But we gotta remember to actually look for the knowledge and instructions and everything that's laid down, so we can actually know what to do. Because not all the time will we have the book or someone to tell us, so we have to have it in our heart, or we have to have it. We have to look for it. So, um, and then we make some processes, which is why we can learn from our mistakes, so we won't do it again. There's a lot of patterns that happen when we're going down the wrong path, and experiences that we see from others. We should learn from them, so we don't fall into these mistakes and then end up following our own path. And then going against the design made for you obviously has some bad side effects: pain, struggles, broken relationships, broken marriages, sources that aren't biblical, like fan fictions. I was watching a YouTube channel, and it was just talking about the history of Jesus, and it was like, hey, did you know Jesus was murdering other kids as a young person? I'm like, that's gotta be fan fiction. Come on. Like, why is that? Are you saying that's why they didn't put into the book his child life? But fan fictions be fan fictioning. People, you can even see in today's pop culture where people don't want you, where they think they have a better story. And I mean, there are some good fan fictions out there, not nonetheless. But I'm just saying that the original story is usually the understandable one because you can get the feeling of what the person's trying to tell you. But when fan fiction is like, no, I want it this way. I don't like your version of it, even if it's official, even though it comes from the from horse's mouth or something. Even if it's all that, I don't think it's. I don't think to my standard, the person saying is like, okay, no, I don't want this because I don't think it should go this way. This is where it should go. And I also wanted to bring up the artificial intelligence and stuff like that. Um, because I want to kind of relate the AI to human human intelligence. This one was kind of hard to kind of talk about because it was like, okay, well, before the things we created or form or before we create these things, like um, at least the pictures on our art standard, before pictures were created and formulated, they were in our thoughts before we put these concept downs and based on our environment. So when it comes to this new AI, these things also are formed in our mind of how we want them to how we want them to operate. So we act like mini gods, as we know. Even as a creator myself and a writer, you basically act like mini gods, demigods, if you want to call it. But I remember that a preacher was saying that you act like a mini G, but I guess a demigod would be the correct term. And um, that's what when we create these things, that's where we're basically imitating God, and that's why whenever I write something, I'm like, it really makes me think about um, as I'm writing in the universe of a writer. Now I can just um, it doesn't make me think about like JoJo, how Kishibe Rohan is a writer as a mangaka in a world created by a mangaka, and how we are or writers can be writers in the world of the king a who is the top writer. And so AI, artificial intelligence is intelligence given to man, and man giving the intelligence to a artificially created being. So I don't want to dwell on this segment too much, but I was talking about the fear. I was talking about the bell curve and stuff like that, and you know a lot of other things about AI. I don't think I was too versed on talking about it. I think there was like more that could have been talked about, but it was just really just pointing out there are things that I could have written the whole exaltation on the computer because I was exploring the idea of how maybe I should save time and just let the computer write it. And the problem is that it wouldn't have heart. I could be writing all this. The AI could have wrote this and I could read it, but then I'm not very good at reading, and I'd have to edit out a bunch of like and stuff like that. Um, but it does show that like an AI could have created this whole speech. And I did look up. I did kind of just look it up and say, okay, let me see what you can say about um about a writer and what a writer would say about architect, God's architect, someone who creates, talking about the creator. It said the most basic generic thing that you can get off of a website, but I wanted it to actually have feelings. And so Robin says there still needs to be heart behind the words that are being spoken and understood. You I know I went a long rant because it's on the heart, but yes, there you can't just say you can just put these words out there, but you still need someone behind each and every one of these things. So AI, even though it's here and stuff like that, and we're creating to get rid of of jobs and like alleviate a lot of jobs and stuff like that. Um, AI art, AI whatever will attach to that. AI women, AI whatever you want to say. Streamers, videos, all this stuff. It still needs a heart. You can't. It can't be without a human being to operate it. It can, but it's just that, like, even with this whole thing I'm saying, it came from the heart, and that's why I chose this exaltation to be something of a writer to a writer. 'Cause maybe a computer can talk about how a creator of a creator to about God. I don't know, but I'm assuming this video is now feeding the algorithm that's out there, and and it's taking it up right now. So that'd be cool. At least when the algorithm of everything that's being said, audio and stuff like that, is taken up by the machine will understand human beings in theory. Who knows? Um, but if it does, then you know it lead the machine to Christ, even though it's an artificial intelligence. And I'm not saying this because of like, oh, the Terminator or something like that. I'm just saying because um as a creator, giving creation something, and the world is all God's creation. We speak what the creator uh want. We speak what the creator would probably most likely want us to do to like the things that we create. You know, to give it the fruits of the spirit. So those who are afraid of their coming doom, maybe there is no doom coming. No, maybe there's no doom eternal. You know. Um, but I mean, yeah, I'm not saying. I mean, of robot apocalypse, not or I wouldn't say a robot Armageddon. I'm just kind of ranting, but you get the point. So I just wanted to point that out. The last thing, it, to for people to understand. So that's my exaltation. That's why we're here for a purpose. And if you're listening to this, thank you for listening. I'm glad that you took your time out to listen to whatever is being said, and I pray that you have a blessed day. Thank you.